Music is something that a lot of you like to listen. Today we'll be looking at the Music Assistant, HACS integration that allows you to play media from the streaming services, but also from your local storage or network attached drive. We'll start in a couple of seconds. A long time ago, I created a video on how you can create a radio browser, where you can stream radio stations from your home assistant to any Chromecast speaker. There is also option to play it on the Amazon speakers, but it was a bit different. Next, Home Assistant brought us Media Browser, or later on called Media Panel, that allows you to play radio stations but also check out the UPnP or DLNA servers and pull media from there. But there is also one HACS integration called Music Assistant that allows you to stream various types of media files, actually from various media sources. On this screen here you can see my favorites tab from the TuneIn radio. But what I also did is I connected it to my Synology network attached storage, where I have a music folder with a lot of media files. 970 albums in total. So let's look at the procedure for the installation of this component. You need to have HACS enabled on your system. Go to HACS, Integrations, plus to explore and download repositories, and type in music. Click on Music Assistant, and of course, before you install it, read the documentation. There is also a nice discussion page, so my suggestion for you is to click on three dots, repository, and do the reading and exploring on the GitHub repository. As I mentioned, there is discussions, and here you can find various topics: announcements, polls, feature requests, music providers, player support, Q&A, show and tell, etc. When you have read everything, click on the download, and of course the next step is to restart your Home Assistant. Please note, for me, when I installed it on my production system, it took 2 restarts to get it working. So if configuration fails after you have restarted your Home Assistant, just try to restart the system once more. Check configuration and restart. While the system is restarting, let's look at the documentation. So what is Music Assistant? It's actually some kind of a library browser / search engine for all of your media files. For example, if you have Spotify, YouTube Music, local files, TuneIn, what you could, for example, do is search for the media files. The system will search through all of the specified services that you have connected and search for the media file that has the best quality. No, it doesn't prefer local files. So if you have a local file and a Spotify file, where the Spotify has a better quality, it will stream from Spotify. But also it allows you to create playlists, to manage favorites, and also to create fade in, fade out transitions between songs. For example, if you normally play the music, one song ends, the other one begins. With the fade out and fade in, it allows you to blend the ends of the song so that one starts just as the other one is finishing. As it says, it supports multiple music sources. Currently, this is Spotify, Qobuz, YouTube Music, TuneIn Radio, and local file system. But soon to come are Tidal and Deezer. It automatically matches music on different platforms, track linking, fetches metadata for extended artist information, keeps track of entire music library in a compact database. All media players available in Home Assistant that support streaming from the URL are supported. Note here, Amazon speakers do not support out-of-box streaming of the URLs. So this goes more toward Sonos, Chromecast devices, etc. As I mentioned, gapless, crossfade, and volume normalization support for all players. And last but not least, rich user interface. The documentation for the configuration installation is really simple, and I really do suggest that you look through it. There may be some things that you want to configure the other way than the one that I will show you now. Since Home Assistant has restarted, let's go to Settings, Integrations, click on plus sign, type here music, select Music Assistant, and wait for the configuration wizard to start. As I mentioned previously, if it hangs with the error, you can try restarting your Home Assistant once again. If everything goes well, the next step is to select all the media players that you intend to use with the Music Assistant. Each of the current players or player entities will be duplicated with the prefix in the name. Let me quickly select a couple of them and click Next. Here we need to configure music providers. If you have paid version of the Spotify account, so no free versions, you tick here the box, type in your username, and I think you have to use the username, not the email address, and of course the password. Same goes for this Qobuz. If you are, on the other hand, YouTube music user, such as myself, you need to provide the username, this can be email address, and your login cookie for YouTube Music. I will show you how to fetch it later in the video. For the TuneIn Radio, you can use the free version of TuneIn Radio. Just tick this box, specify the username for the TuneIn Radio. In my case, it's Billy Tinker, and that's it. And the last thing that you can specify is the file system provider. We will enable it. Home Assistant already has a folder that is called Media. This is this Media tab folder or Media browser folder. But we will also map later in the video my Synology NAS to it. And this folder will be called Music NAS. Click on Submit. Music Assistant, as I've mentioned, is now creating duplicates of all your media players with the name Music Assistant added to the end of it. Select areas. For me, this one is dining room. Whatever me is Luca room. She's a teenager, or whatever. Mini me is the youngest daughter. And the clock me is smart clock in the bedroom. Let's click on Finish. If you later on want to add or remove service or change something, you just need to press on Configure. Once again, you will be presented with a list of all the player entities where you can remove them or add new player entities. And yes, you can also add groups of the speakers here. And on this page, you can once again specify enable or disable specific music providers. Note that if you try to enable file system provider, this has to be valid path. For me, it's still not a valid path, so it's currently disabled. There are two additional options that I don't think were present where we initially configured the system. One is to hide source players in a Home Assistant UI. That means that we will not be seeing duplicates of the same music players or media players. And the other one is to create media players for Music Assistant players in Home Assistant. For now, I will leave both boxes ticked on. Submit. If everything goes well, you will see on the left side Music Assistant. It takes some time for the system to sync all the files, especially if you have external media library, such as myself on my Synology NAS. I think it took around 3 or 4 hours to sync everything up. For now, I should only see radio stations. If you do not see any radio stations or any media files, and you don't see a wheel here spinning, click on 3 dots and you can either run sync or force full sync. Let's press run sync. When there are background tasks, you will see this wheel spinning. Of course, you can now press on radio, select a speaker, for example, clock me, and play radio. And that's it. Yeah, it's very similar to what you could do through the media browser. You could select a radio station, select a speaker and play it. But it's not the same. While media browser does allow you to browse DLNS servers, local media files, etc., it doesn't allow you to sync your libraries. I've mentioned syncing libraries a couple of times. Let's jump to my Synology and look what I have on my Synology and how did I create a connection between the Synology Samba share and the Home Assistant. If we click on File Station and look at my folders, you will see I have one called Music. And inside of that music folder, I have a lot of files. Actually, it says it has 2440 items. But there are also a lot of folders and subfolders. Some of them are folders for the albums, other ones for the artists, etc. Most of the CDs I had, I ripped and placed the files on my Synology. This folder is called shared folder. We can check that through the control panel, shared folders, and we can see that the music folder is one of the folders that is shared. If we edit it, I have disabled Recycle Bin because previous versions of Music Assistants had problems or issues with the hashtag recycle folder, so that's why I disabled it. In terms of permission, I have also created one user called demo_HA that has read and write access to this folder. I think that you can go with read only, but just to be on the safe side, this user that I've created has read and write access. In terms of other permissions, if you want to increase the security of your Synology, you can add access to music folder, and in terms of applications, disable the DSM access. That way, that dummy user will not be able to access your UI. And in terms of Synology setup, that's it. You need to have a shared folder, you need to create a user with the username and password, and to prevent any accidental issues, limit it to access only that folder and deny access to DSM. Back in Home Assistant, we have to create one shell command and one automation. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, and inside your configuration.yaml file, if you don't have already, type in following: shell underscore command. Now we will type in the name of this command, and this is how the command will be known in the system. For me, I've chosen this name, mount underscore music underscore folder. Why I opted for this name is because in the future I may opt and use additional mapped folders for Home Assistant, so now I know that this is only used for the music folder. I did put everything inside quotes, although it's not mandatory. Type in the command mkdir -p media, and this command will create a new folder called Music NAS inside the folder media. Remember that we typed the name of this folder when we configured Music Assistant. By the way, a link to the code to GitHub repository where I've also posted all of these commands will be in the video description. So let me quickly paste in the code that we need to finish this up. Second part of the command is to mount CFS. Version is 3.0. If you have issues with this command not working, try the 2.0 or 1.0 version. No server ino, username. Here type in the username that you created on your Synology. Password for that user. Domain is workgroup, unless you are using something different. This is the IP address of your Synology and the shared folder name. In my case, this is music. And the last part is the folder or path to the folder that we just created on the start of the command. It's media/music NAS, same as this one here. And that's it. We now have to create automation that will be run every time Home Assistant restarts so that it loads or creates this folder and then mounts it. Let me quickly restart Home Assistant so that this shell command is available. While the system is still starting up, let's create automation. Start with empty automation, trigger, Home Assistant on start, add action, call service, and select the shell command mount music folder, or whatever you called your command. Click on save. Mount Synology or Samba for use with Music Assistant. Don't forget to subscribe. It works better if you are my YouTube channel subscriber. Click on save. Let's run it. And if everything is set up correctly and we go to media folder, local media, we will now see additional folder called Music NAS, and that's the name of the folder we used in that script. And if we click there, we will see all of our files on our shared Samba folder, in my case Synology NAS. Let's go to Settings, Integrations, and now we want to enable this in a Music Assistant. Click on Configure, Next, and tick box next to Enable File System Provider. Next. Submit, Finish. As I mentioned, this will take some time. It needs to scan all of the files, it needs to check the tags, create library, etc. So if it takes some time before files show up, just wait a little bit more. Let's go to Music Assistant, Artists, and we only have two so far. What can you do with Music Assistant? You can play playlists, you can browse or search the artists, you can browse or search the albums, you can search the individual tracks, and my library does have a lot of them. You can search and play your favorite radio stations. And of course, you can browse all of that, either going into TuneIn Radio, file system, or if you would have YouTube Music, Spotify, etc. As I mentioned, you can search. For example, Christmas. It will find you everything that has Christmas in the name. But you can narrow down the search by the artists, albums, tracks, etc. You can select the speaker where you want to play something. You can queue up the songs. And of course, you can use all that in your automations. One thing, for example, that you can do is use Music Assistant to play Christmas music when you return home from work. I did have a question on my last stream, and by the way, if you didn't know, I do streams every 2 weeks. One of the questions was to talk about my Christmas setup. I mentioned on the stream that I'm forbidden to touch any lights in the house, so all of the existing LED strips that I have about 6 or 7 of them, they are synced, and I do use WLED software on them, control them from Home Assistant, and change a bit of color and intensity to match the Christmas theme. But nothing else I'm allowed to touch, except radios. And my first video about radio stations and how to play them in Home Assistant was created just for that, to play Christmas music in the morning or evening when we return home. Now let's look at what you have to do to get the YouTube cookie. Open a new window, go to the music.youtube.com. Open the developer tools by using Ctrl+Shift+I, select the network tab, and let's press on Explore to load something up. In the filter box, type Browse, click on the request, go to Headers, verify that the status code is 200, and I apologize for this being too small. Find the Request section, and in this section you will find an entity named Cookies. This one here. Right-click the entity, select Copy Value, and you need to paste this value in the password section of your YouTube Music configuration. In Home Assistant, go to Settings, Integrations, click on Configure Music Assistant, Next, enable YouTube Music Provider, type in your username, which is your email address, and paste the cookie. Click on Next and Submit. We now have also YouTube Music, where you can see the albums, playlists, etc. Once again, it will take some time for this to be synced. But now you also have option to play your YouTube Music from within Home Assistant via the Music Assistant. And if we now search for example, Christmas music, we will see results not just from our file system, but also results from the YouTube Music. You can select it and play. Isn't this a great gem for Home Assistant? I know that a lot of people have been thinking about something like this when the Music tab or Music browser was added to Home Assistant. Music Assistant is really awesome, and I really hope that a lot of you will be installing it and using it. Don't forget to check out the GitHub repository Then go to discussions and see if there are any other tips, tricks, or ideas that you can implement in your own system. And if you do like this project, you can sponsor this project. This contribution will go towards the author or team that is working on a music assistant and make them feel appreciated and loved. And they really do need a love because they put a lot of time and effort into this integration. And by the way, when we are already talking about love, I really want to thank all of you that have become my YouTube channel members. Thank you all for all of your support. But also thanks to each and every one of you who has watched, liked, or subscribed to my channel. If you too want to support the channel, you can do so by clicking the join button down below and becoming a YouTube channel member for only €2 or $2 a month. But also there is option to buy merch in my merchandise store. The link to the merchandise store is in the video description. I hope that you find this video useful and I will be seeing you next time. Until then, bye bye and have fun.